Of. Okay, so we spoke, the first part of the unit is about poetry, the terminology, and today we will be discussing how to read a poem and how to understand a poem. Would like to start with a video to show you how to figure out a poem and how to understand it, the most important things you're going to use to understand what are we looking for in a poem.
Like, I don't get it. So I actually spent some time figuring out how to figure out poetry. And now I don't say it's my favorite. I still don't love it. I don't read poetry for fun, on a Friday night. But I really understand and can dig into them and have a rich experience, even if it's. This week, we are not going to dig into a specific poem. I'm just going to lay the groundwork about a few steps, 9 steps actually, that you can use when your English teacher gives you a poem or you see it on a standardized test. If there's some environment where you have to dig into some lines, this is going to be a helpful path. All right, first of all, show no fear. It's going to be okay. Okay, do not be afraid of the poem. You are not going to understand everything the first time you read it, and that's okay. So it's actually part of the fun of unpacking the package of a poem and starting to understand and see and notice small things along the way. Some of them are very dense, and some of them I still don't get everything that's in there, and that's okay. That's part of the fun of the process. So surrender that idea and don't be afraid. All right, we're going to start with the title of a poem. And then you're just going to stop. You're just going to sit and consider what this might be about. Just thinking about that title, where do you think you're going to be going? Decide that before you move into the actual lines. Then you're going to read that poem all the way through. I don't want you to stop. You're just going to keep on trucking, because in this step 3, you're just trying to get the gist. Do you have a general understanding about what happens in the poem? We'll dig into details on later steps and iron out any wrinkles. But for now, just, do you kind of understand what's going on in this poem? Number 4, you're then going to read it again, but this time you're going to annotate as you do. And way back at the beginning of the year, I want to say it was like the second Freestyle Friday that we had, we talked about annotation. I gave you some tools for that. Use those tools. Basically, if you have a copy that you can write on, that's fabulous. If not, do it on sticky notes or just write comments on a piece of binder paper. It doesn't matter. But you're basically going to write down and notice anything that you really like that jumps out at you as being interesting, anything that reminds you of something else because it might be an allusion to another work that you're familiar with. Circle anything that you think is confusing. Chances are there's probably something pretty interesting happening in that confusing section once you break it down. And then anything that you think, this seems like it's important, but I don't know why, mark that. Now you're going to go back and you're going to look up any words that you don't know. Use your dictionary, grab your phones. Poets use very limited words, right? A poem is very short generally. And so they're very mindful of every word they pack into that small space. Like, their words matter a lot. So if there's a word you don't know, you might be missing a whole bunch of meaning from that. So make sure that you have your definitions down and you know what the words actually mean. Then I want you to identify who is the narrator of the poem. It's not necessarily the poet. In fact, it's probably not the poet himself or herself. Instead, it's a person whose guise they've taken on, who's, that's the lens that we're seeing this situation through. So as best as you can, figure out anything you can about the narrator. Are they sarcastic? Are they maternal? What is the point that they want us to take away from it? Who is talking to us? Then the 7th step, we're almost there, remember there are only 9, is noticing shifts or contradictions or changes. If the narrator is trucking along and then all of a sudden a hinge word like a but or however comes up in the poem, generally it's like 2/3 into the poem, but nevertheless, and then whatever comes after that hinge is probably the point of the poem. So pay attention if you notice any shifts or changes, because that's where the meaning is probably right after that. Look at the structure. How did this poet put the words on the page, right? What's the rhyme scheme? Does the physical structure meter add to the meaning of the poem? More modern poets, they actually like physically take up a lot of white space on the page, and some of them even make images with how the words are placed. Like, that's important. It's not by accident. So what meaning can we give to that? And then finally, my friend, you're almost there. Just read it one more time out loud if possible, if people won't think you're crazy. Like, don't do this during the SAT. But if you're in a situation where you can actually hear the words after you've done that deep study and dug into it, read it one more time and see if that doesn't help solidify everything and make it concrete. Congratulations, you guys. You now have a 9 steps to success about how to read a poem. Next week, I think we might.
Okay. Now, the lady here gave you tips, 9 tips on how to read a poem. Before I continue with you discussing and applying those 9 steps on poetry or any poem of your choice or my choice, just want you to confirm that you understand what you need to do. So I'm going to ask you to write in the chat box, what are the steps? You can just write one word. What are the steps you need to look for when you are reading a poem? What are they? Just words, like, for example, read, understand the meaning, figure out the main idea. Any of those, just write them down in the chat box. Let me see how much you grasped. Write down in the chat, please. Yes, very good, Jawad. To read the poem more than once and out loud if you can, of course. Bravo. What else? What is the first thing you need to read when you are looking for a poem? The first thing, the very first thing, what is it? The first word, what would it be? What is the first word you can see in a poem? What is the first thing on top of the poem? What do you call it? Yes, it is the title. So first of all, you need to look at the title of the poem. From the title, you can relate what is it going to be about. And then you have a quick reading to get the gist, which is the main idea of the poem. And then you have to annotate. Annotate meaning to try to find relations and to understand what is the poet wants to say. You need to look for new or difficult words. If you are like in regular reading time, you would be definitely looking up the words in the dictionary. Probably in a test, you might not have enough time to go check all the words, but you have to try to guess the meaning. And also you need to look for the narrator or the narrator, and not necessarily the person who writes the poem is the poet, it's himself, he or she. Sometimes the poets write a poem on the tongue of a cat, or on the tongue of a child, or a tongue of a cloud. Any narrator could, the poet could use them to write the poem. You also need to look for any changes in the poem, any contradictions, any movement, just to understand the construct of the poem. What is it about? Why did the poet move from this side to this side, and so on and so forth. And then you have to read again and again to just understand what is it about. So we will try now to figure out how we can do that on one example of the poems, and we can just take it as a practice, because definitely in the exam you will have a poem for you to analyze. So if you look here, this is an example. I'm gonna just explain to you how to analyze a poem. However, for the first step, we're gonna just apply what we read in the, what we heard in the video. We need to figure out the poem. What is it? So I want you please now to take down notes or write on your laptop or anywhere what are the steps we do. So the first thing is to look for, what is this? I'm gonna highlight it here. It's the title. Important for you to know the title, because the title can give you an idea. So here it is, Stolen Rivers. Stolen Rivers. So it has to do something with the river, something to do with the nature, something to do with people suffering from something, because there is stolen, okay? So the writer started here saying, we Africans came to Berlin to sing and recite poetry. We had an agenda, remembering our anthems of loss, galloping, consuming, the pillage, the cries, like forest fires, like haunted children. How can we even begin to redress? Enraged, we wanted revenge. And then she once saw you stepped on the stage and you opened your mouth, and every stolen river of platinum and gold poured out of your mouth in song. Your voice etched us out of the night and doubled the light in each of us. You restored all the treasure houses, from Benin to Zimbabwe, Mangwa to Cairo. Africa moved its golden bones, shook off its heavy chains, and danced again. That night I thought, if only love could purchase bread, Africans would not be hungry. So I'm gonna give you only 1 minute to read it again for yourself. And I want you to write down in the chat box, what do you think the poem is? What is it about? Let me see what you wrote in the chat box. Can you please write what is it about? What is this poem about? I need to make sure that you are following up. There is no point of me. Okay, bravo, Muhammad. Is it about revenge? Okay, thank you, Muhammad. Thank you so much. You are going to get grades for participation in the class. So you need to participate even if you're not gonna talk, at least write in the chat box. What is the poem about? It could be about revenge, yes. What else? Jawad, is there anything you can say? Yes, sir. The struggles of African people. Excellent, excellent, very nice. Absolutely, yes, sir. Do you have something to say? Yes, sir. Are you here? I'm gonna give you grades for participation. So what do you think, Yasser, the poem is about? So we can have a response. It could be about revenge. It could be about the struggles of the African people. Yes. What else? So if we are going to apply what you heard in the video, we are going first of all, because you will have a test in such a thing and you are going to analyze a poem for homework. And next, on Sunday, you are going to have the unit test. In every unit, we're going to have a final test. So on Sunday, the last hour, you will have a test, the poetry test for the end of the unit. So it's better to work with me now. And if you don't understand anything or a little bit hesitant, or you want me to double explain, that would be fine. No problem at all if you don't understand. So if you can see here, The Stolen River is the title of the poem. So the first thing you need to look at is the title. From the title, you can tell that the writer is going to talk about something that is stolen, with a bit of sad feeling, with a bit of feeling or desire for revenge. They wanted to revenge from who? You can think, and the struggles of the African people against who? Absolutely against the colonization. You know that Africa was occupied by the superpowers, the British Kingdom at that time, and France and Italy. All right. If you have a look at history, you will know that at a certain time, the superpowers were occupying those countries. And when they were occupying countries, what did they steal from there? What did they take from them? Look at that, the platinum, the gold, and they got it in their pockets. Like, you know, in Zimbabwe, in Cairo, all of the Benin, these are the main major cities in Africa. So the writer is filled with sorrow. The writer is sad because of what happened to Africa and the African treasures and the African resources that were stolen. And the writer here concludes saying that that's his point of view. If only love could purchase bread, Africans would not be hungry. If there was more love than hatred, if there was more love than, you know, wanting to steal other people's richness, the people wouldn't be anybody hungry. So if you think about our modern time, what is happening? The superpowers, what are they taking? They are taking the oil, they are taking the petrol and all the gas and the natural gases from the countries that are not like, well developed. However, what they do, they steal their resources. So this is the first thing for you to get to understand. And then the second thing, she gave you an advice. What is the gist of the poem? The writer wanted to express his sorrow about the Africans. But what is the medium? What is he going to use? He is going to address the talk to this name. And this name is a famous singer who used to sing like Bob Marley. Are you familiar with Bob Marley? He is always, singing about the blues and about the suffering of the Black people and suffering of the countries that were occupied by superpowers. So this singer usually was like, the spokesman of the stories and the history and all the time speaking up for the good of the African people. So who is the narrator? The narrator is the poet, and he is addressing this poem to this singer, a famous singer. He's addressing, now, if you are in the exam and you don't know that this is the singer, you might be saying that would be okay. And a good correct answer if you say he is addressing praise to the name of this person, that he was also looking for the rights of the African people. This guy used to sing in his songs the rights of the Black people and so on. Okay, and then the next thing is to look for difficult words. So let me ask you about any words you do not know. Can you please write in the chat box what are the words that you think they are difficult, you cannot, you do not understand? Can you write them? I'm gonna move here. Okay. Do you know this word? Galloping? You can say yes or no. No. So what you do here, you just right click here and look for synonyms. You will see galloping is like dashing. Like if you have a horse and the horse is running, galloping. So this is dashing, meaning running fast or moving quickly. Okay. Consuming, I think you know consuming. It's like to eat something or to make use of something, to take it all. The pillage, do you know what is the pillage? Looks like not. So you go down for synonyms, is the pillage, is the sack, the cargo. It's like if you have goods, if you have merchandise, if you have something, you sell and buy something. So they are talking, the poet is talking about the loss and the dashing and the consuming, stealing and taking all the goods, and the cries. Here the cries meaning they also took the calls, the yells, the screams of the people, like forest fires. Look at that, because we can see here the poet is using literature, metaphor. We will talk about metaphors now, but just remember we highlighted this. I'm going to explain later when we come to the metaphors. What is metaphors is the way of writing the writer is using in order to make it like, more appealing and touchy and more stronger. Like haunted children. How can we even begin to redress? You know what is the meaning of redress? Redress is, anybody know? Is to solve a problem or to repent or to recompense, like to solve a problem or to, compensate. If I take something from you and I feel sorry, I should get it back to you. If I cannot get it back to you, I should do something good for you. So look at another thing here. I'm going to use a different color. This is, my dear students, is the way to understand the poetry, to highlight things and use colors to understand. We're going to talk about the purple and the green here mentioned, okay? Enraged, we wanted revenge. And then Schwensio, you stepped on the stage. Now the writer or the poet is talking to the singer. He's telling him, you come on the stage and you opened your mouth. And when you open your mouth, and every stolen river of platinum and gold poured out of your mouth in song. Look at all this. Is this true, dear class? Can any singer, when they sing, if you open your mouth, can a river of platinum and gold and diamond can come out of your mouth? Is that possible? Write me in the chat if it is possible or not. Is that possible? If you open your mouth and you sing, you can see a river coming? No, yes. So this means there is a figure of speech here. There is a figure of speech. Figure of speech meaning unrealistic resemblance, unrealistic something, because the writer wants to make it beautiful to you, wants to make it strong. So we'll discuss this at a later point. I'm just highlighting and paying attention. I want you to pay attention to those. Your voice etched us out of the night and doubled the lights in each of us. Look at the night and the light. I'm going to use a different color here. Night and the light. We'll talk about it in a minute. You restored all the treasure houses from Benin to Zimbabwe to Cairo. Africa moved its golden bones. And let me ask you, the bones of the people, are they golden? Is there can we see golden bones? This is again something that we need to stop at. Shook off its heavy chains. Remember the black people when they were shipped in cargoes on a ship from Africa to the US and to all over the world, everywhere. They crumbled them in ships and they put them, they put heavy chains on their legs and on their feet and on their neck. So look at the detailed description of the poet here, okay? And dance it again. Look at that. Who is dancing? Look at this. Africa moved its golden bones, shook off its heavy chains, and danced again. Let me ask you, do you think Africa can dance? You can write me yes or no. Africa. Is Africa a person or a thing that can dance? You can just write yes or no. Can Africa dance? Of course not. Africa cannot dance. We'll see that this is a way of the poet uses. We'll see what we call it and we'll see how he uses this way. That night I thought if only love could purchase bread, Africans would not be hungry. So here, those last lines, these are what? These are the poet's message. These are the poet's message. He wanted to, the poet wanted to give us a message. What is his message, dear class? What is his message? He wanted to tell you, I put it in a different color, hopefully you can see. He wanted to tell you the message. He wants the world to think about the time when Africa went hungry. And why did Africa went hungry? Because of the greed and the hatred of the colonization. And if only love was there, the people in Africa wouldn't have to die out of hunger or be in hungry situation. So this is how you read a poem. This is how to try to understand a poem. You read the title, you figure out what is it about, and then you try to figure out what are the difficult words. If there is any difficult word, you try to figure it out. If you are in a test and you cannot use the dictionary, then probably you try to guess what is the meaning. And then you try to think of the narrator. Who is the narrator? Who is the writer or the poet addressing? Is he talking to us or to the singer or to the people or to his mother or to nature? Who is he talking to? And then you need to think of the tone. Look at this word, the tone. I just put it in the chat. The tone is how the poet feeling. And how did you get the feeling? How the poet managed or succeeded to make you feel either happy, angry, sad, sympathizing, curious. All of these, what we call the tone. Now let me ask you, what was the tone? Or in other words, how did you feel when we read the poem? You can write in the chat, how did you feel? What was the tone of the poet? Can you write in the chat, how did you feel? And how, yes, sad, very good. I liked what Muhammad said in the beginning. He wanted, but see, Muhammad, it's not like revenge, because revenge always has an element of violence. If you want to revenge, meaning sometimes it's hard and sometimes you go into war. But the writer here, or the poet, he wants us to sympathize with the people in Africa, and probably he's asking for an apology, compensation. Compensation. So a compensation or apology. He wants to get an apology or compensation, like, you know, when you did something wrong to a friend or so, and you say sorry, and it's not enough, so you try to give them a gift or to give them money or something. So he's looking for a compensation and probably looking for an apology. And by the way, dear class, it's okay to analyze the poem in any form you can think of. I mean, there is nothing called like absolutely wrong or absolutely right. You can analyze it as how you can think of. Now, in a minute, I'll show you another video for one poet, this time a poet, somebody who writes poetry, and they tell you the tips and the tricks how to understand their poem. So how to analyze a poem, because you will have this in your exam, will ask you to analyze a poem. So what you need to do, first, you have to answer this question. What is the poem about? Mainly, it is about the theme of the poem. So what is the theme? What is the message the author wants to communicate in this poem? The theme is different from the main idea, because the main idea always describe what is the text is mostly about. You will see details and lots of ideas connected together. But the theme, you can get it so quickly, even from the title. So when I read Stolen Rivers, I know that there is something about resources that are stolen, something about a country that something taken out of the country. So you get to know it from the title. Now, next thing you say, how does the use of repeated words affect the poem's meaning? Remember when I highlighted the poem in purple? Of course, you don't remember now. Let me show you again one more time, because I just want you to grasp it so quickly and see it. All right. So let me check if you can still remember this. Remember the repeated words here? Look at the repeated words. How can we How can we? Look at the repeated words, and we will talk about it in a minute. So you look for repeated words. You also need to look for repeated words, because that will help you analyze it and understand it in a better way. Okay, so repeated words. Next thing is to look for what is the tone of the poem, and how can we know the tone. Remember, we talk about how did it make you feel, the poet's attitude towards the poem's speaker or the reader. What is the subject matter? Described as the mood. What is the mood in the poem? All right. Many of you just said sad. It's sad. All right. And how did you know that? You know it from the syntax. Syntax is the meaning, the words, the figures of a speech, the figures, meaning the language the writer uses. The rhyme is the sound in the poem. Now, what effect do the words have on the meaning? Again, this is really important. So the poet's diction can unlock images. Remember, the poet uses certain words because they wanted to make you realize, and they wanted to give you the feeling. Certain words, what are they? Okay, what examples of alliteration are there? What is the effect? The alliteration is the repetition of the sound. Just remind me, did we talk last time about alliteration and metaphor and simile? You can just write in the chat box if yes or no. Did we talk about these? The figures of speech, the simile and the alliteration, the sounds and repetition of sounds. Can you just confirm? Did we talk about the metaphor and the simile? Anyone? We talked. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So these exactly we are going to apply in this class or in this part of the unit, which is how to analyze the poem. So what examples of alliteration are there? What is the effect? The writer is using the sound, the music. What is it for? Does it make you happy or does it make you sad, and so on? So the alliteration can be used to create mood or emotions in a piece of writing. It can be also used to add rhythm. You know the rhythm, it's like the drum, the sound in the drum on writing or in speaking. And the rhyme and rhythm used to give a certain effect. It's called the syllables. Look at this one. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men cannot put Humpty Dumpty together again. So just to look at the syllables here, this is what we call the rhythm, the music within the lines. Look at wall and fall, all. Look at these. These are the rhyme. So do not mix up the rhyme and the rhythm. The rhythm is the music inside the line, the syllables. It's all about the stressed syllables. Okay, it's all about the stressed syllables in the line. The words at the end are called the rhyme. So the rhyme are the words at the end. You see the same sound: wall, fall, all, men, again. Okay, so wall, fall, all is rhyme. The rhythm is the music in the line. Where we get the music from? We get it from the stressed syllables. When I say Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, how many syllables are there? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. It's 4. So those 4 rhythm makes the music. Sometimes the writers use the rhythm to create monotony. They want you to feel bored. Like if you are reading a poem about prisoners, that they are locked up in a prison for years and years and years, definitely there will be monotony. So probably the writer would use a rhythm of okay. However, the rhymes at the end to give you music to understand carefully and to get it well. Now, another important thing to look at is how is the structure of the poem? How does it affect the meaning? It is really important for you to realize if the poem is a story, or how is it formatted? Is it kind of stanzas? How are the lines break, the rhyme patterns, the punctuation, and the pauses? The structure affects the context of understanding. It's important for you to know who is saying the poem, who is writing the poem, under whose voice, and what is it about? Is it about revenge? Is it about love? Is it about food? What is it about? And where it is written, where is the context here? And when, about what, and why? All of these important to figure out from the poem, because they will help you to understand the purpose. And here, let me tell you, not necessarily what you feel is exactly like Yasser, or like Muhammad, or like Leon, or Dahlia, or anybody. Everybody would understand the poem in a little different way, which is acceptable as long as you can back up your point of view, your explanation, using the evidence from the poem. Okay, you can use it as an evidence from the poem. So this is what we talk about, the figures of speech and how you get it and how you understand the poem. Now I'm going to give you 5 minutes break. You will come back at 7:05 to drink some water or something, and then when you come back, we'll continue working on the figuring out the poem.